Hello and welcome to Writers and Books. My name is Kathy Sepna. I'm the Communications Associate here. For those of you who are new to us, Writers and Books is a nonprofit literary arts center. We offer readings, workshops, a bookstore, and literary programming for people of all ages and backgrounds. You can learn more about what we do at wab.org. Writers and Books would like to call attention to the complex and troubled history of the lands on which we live and work. We are hosting this event from the unceded ancestral homelands of the Onondaga, or the people of the Great Hill. In English, they are known as the Seneca people, or the keeper of the Western Door. We're so happy to have Kristen Gentry with us tonight. First, she'll share a little bit about her book and her project, and then we'll hear her read, followed by a Q&A. Set amid the tail end of the crack epidemic and the rise of the opioid crisis, the linked stories in Mama Said evoke Black family life in all its complexity, following a young girl and her cousins as they come of age struggling against their mother's drug addictions. Kristen Gentry is the author of Mama Said, forthcoming from West Virginia University Press in October. She received her MFA from Indiana University. Her award-winning fiction has been nominated for a Pushcart Prize and appeared in Crab Orchard Review, Jabberwock Review, and other journals. She is a Vona and Bread Loaf Writers Conference alumna and selected to participate in the inaugural cohort of Poets and Writers Get the Word Out Publicity Incubator, and featured in De Beautiful. She is currently an associate professor of English and director of creative writing at SUNY Geneseo, and will soon relocate to her hometown of Louisville, Kentucky, to live, write, and help other Black women and girls share their stories. Thank you and enjoy.
Thank you for that introduction, Catherine. Hi, everybody. Hey, I'd like to thank Writers and Books for hosting this event, and I'd like to thank all of you, those in the room and online, for being here this evening. I'm excited for this event. I'm calling this event the pre-launch of Mama Said, my debut collection of linked stories. Take out the cover. There are no physical copies of the book available yet, but I wanted to celebrate because Rochester has been my home for nearly 20 years, I think. It's been a long time. And I wanted to celebrate this accomplishment with friends and colleagues here. So there will be no copies down in Ampersand to purchase, but the book is available for pre-order, and you can pre-order through Ampersand. I believe there's a link on the events page. You can also visit my website, kristengentry.com, to pre-order the book. And I think are there book plates? Okay, and so because I won't be able to sign physical copies of the book, there will be book plates, so I can sign those. And so when the books arrive, you can place them in your books and have those and have the signature. So this evening, I'm going to read. It's kind of weird sitting in a chair. I mean, I like it, but I'm still feeling uptight. It's like I want to settle into the comfort of it. So this evening, I'm going to read from the book's title story, and frame that story in the context of the forthcoming holiday. So if you didn't know, Mother's Day is Sunday, May 14th. So if you forgot, get on it. If your mom is the mom who wants gifts, or if that is your journey. The holiday is marketed as a day when mothers receive their much deserved praise for being super moms, working tirelessly to provide, clean, love, encourage, and support their children. Mother's Day mamas is what I call them. Don't ever get exhausted. They always give good advice. They always smile and give warm hugs and make pancakes on Saturdays and have warm plates of cookies waiting when their children come home from school. They are beautiful, perfectly kempt, always there when their children need them, and never miss an opportunity to tell their kids they are special, important, and their dreams will in fact come true. There are always cards that say all of the nice things to celebrate these Mother's Day mamas, as I like to call them, and highlight their greatness. My mother is beautiful and I love her, but she is not a Mother's Day mama. Searching the aisles for a card on Mother's Day usually leaves me feeling disappointed and reaching for a blank card to fill in the gaps to say what feels true for me from daughter to mama. My mother has struggled with depression her whole life. And when I was a young teenager, she went to rehab for opioid addiction. So no, my mother hasn't always been there for me. And I know I'm not the only one who doesn't have a Mother's Day mom. I have family members whose mothers also struggle with addiction. For us and all of the other children with mothers who don't make the Mother's Day mama cut, the holiday is filled with mixed emotions that make us roll our eyes at all the cards with fat floral bouquets on the cover and sugary words in pink script on the inside. Mama Said is for those children. It follows 3 daughters, cousins in the same family, coming of age in Louisville, Kentucky, struggling against their mother's drug addictions, as has been said. The stories explore the anger, sadness, guilt, love, and admiration the daughters have for their mothers, whose examples guide their choices and shape their identities, even though, and possibly more so because, their mothers aren't always physically or emotionally present. All of our mothers have undoubtedly shaped us for good, bad, and otherwise. In spite of what Hallmark or commercials may lead us to believe, most of us don't have Mother's Day mamas. If you do, bless you. Our mamas are ordinary people, perfectly imperfect. And whether we're still able to walk this earth with them, they will forever live with us. Their words and deeds lodge in our heads and hearts. At this time, I'd like to share some memorable words from mamas as offered by their children. I'll begin with a quote from my daddy, John Joseph Gentry. He said his mama, Mama Net, said, "You'll get further in life doing right than doing wrong. Treat people right and you'll be all right." He also said she never had anything bad to say, and if you did something bad, she wasn't going to be in your corner either anyway. So just do right is what she said. I'm blessed to have 2 daddies, and my daddy, Donald Doolin, said his mama, Gilberta McCoy, said, "Put that down, boy, and go get that laundry done." He was the oldest of 5 children, and he said his mother worked a lot. My boo, Joseph Pollock, his mama, Raji Pollock, said, "You know the truth when you hear it." Alice Rakowski's mama said, "Don't decide until you need to decide." I know, right? Carolyn Bell Tolzik's mama said, "What's the object of your emotion?" And she explains that it's such a simple question, but it's really helped me on a cognitive level to sift through a problem, focus on what I can and can't control, and manage stress. Even when I was a bitchy teenager, it made me stop and think. And it's really some good advice. That question, I used it this morning. So thank you, Carolyn Bell Tolzik mama. Aisha Sharif's mama, Brenda Sharif, said, "Don't ever leave your kitchen dirty." Natasha Doolin's mama, Elvira Doolin, said, "Life has many different shades. You need to look past the black and white." Ola Nobara's mama, said, "Your body is a temple." Kayla Grove's mama, Karen Groves, said, "A closed mouth don't get fed." Karen Grove's mama, Richie Sublet, said, Bridgie Sublet is my grandmother, so these are some of my family members, said, "You'll meet the same people going up when you come back down." Heaven Sublet's mama, Stephanie Sublet, would say, "Who do you love?" And Heaven would reply, "You." And her mama would ask, "Who's first and foremost?" And Heaven would reply, "Jesus." April Massard's mama, Yvette Sorey, said, "If a nigga try you, break their ass down to your size, and then you got them. Now beat their ass." Paulette Mitchell's mama, Donna Sublet, said, "God don't like ugly, and he is a monster." Kathy Coleman's mama said, "Go first class as long as it lasts." Jonica Doolin's mama, Pam Doolin, said, "Kick him in the nuts. No matter how big a man is, if he's attacking you, kick him in the nuts and he'll stop." Nicole Jackson Williams' mama, Vanita Brown, said, "You have the power to make him do whatever you want him to do. Remember, girl, you got the power." Keisha Swan's mama, Brenda Swan, said, "You will always be a threat to them at work because you are Black and a woman. You aren't supposed to know as much or more than they do." And Gail Hosking's mama said many things. Gail has written a memoir about her mother, but she offers one of those many things in the following memory. "When my mother was drunk, slurping her soup, and I wanted to take the spoon from her and throw it against the wall, she looked up and said, 'This is who I am. Leave me alone.' Now, decades after her death, I have finally learned that we are who we are, and that is who we must love." And so the title story that I'll be reading from today comes from the autobiographical spark of words my mother said to me. My mother, Cheryl Doolin, said, "I wish I could just drive off a bridge." Mama said, "The JFK Bridge links Louisville with Jeffersonville and hovers over the Ohio River, which is brown, not blue, and this has always made you sad. You have seen documentaries and news stories about pollution, watched large pipes barreling plant and factory waste into rivers, oceans, streams, on TV screens at school and at home. You have seen the ways that people destroy the world around them, destroy one another, destroy themselves. It is easy to cry about this and everything else. Your mother has taught you this. Last summer at Waterfront Park with your cousin Zaria, you imagined a couple trying to create a romantic moment on the riverfront during the day with all that brown water unmasked and the face of the Colgate clock on the Indiana side dark and sullen, like it knows there's nothing about Clarksville worth lighting the sky red. It's like dead dogs and shit floating all in the water," Zaria had said. You conjured a golden, nondescript, mud-loaded XI drifting on the current past the bell of Louisville, and two lovers sitting on a blanket spread on a patch of grass, sipping from wine glasses, and you laughed until your stomach cramped, and you couldn't meet Zaria's eyes without starting all over again. Last night, after hanging up the phone on your mother and what she told you, you reimagined the scene, and your mother replaced the dog drifting on the river. Nothing about that scene made you want to laugh. You were not surprised when your mother told you she's dreamt of disappearing into the Ohio. A type of vanishing is what she's been looking for all along, with the sleeping, the Vicodin, and Oxycontin. Since you were 13, you have had the same nightmare about coming home, peeling back the comforter and sheets shrouding your mother, holding your breath as you check for hers, and find that it had stopped. When you search for a pulse, her wrist under your thumb is still warm. You are minutes, maybe seconds, too late from saving her. You have always known your fears are your mother's fantasies, but you've been polite enough to keep your dark thoughts to yourself. You are starting to realize that you have no solution for your mother's depression. There is nothing you can say, nothing you can do. You will never save her. You don't want to believe this. This is your whole problem. You can't fix her. She's got to get better on her own. Zaria has told you this a million zillion times. You know this is true. It's the whole reason you moved to Bloomington, 100 miles away from your mother, to attend Indiana University instead of just going right near downtown to the University of Louisville. Her sadness is extensive and destructive, a hurricane you had to escape. You think it's not fair that even when you are being selfish, your mother controls your actions. She slept all weekend, and when you were in your car early on Monday morning, ready to leave, and she was walking down the driveway toward you, you wished you could run her over and she wouldn't bleed or die. Just know how mad you are. She wore hospital scrub pants, the gray blue of storm clouds, and a faded red Orlando t-shirt from a family vacation 7 years ago when you were 11 and she and your father were still married, but barely happily so. A small hole about an inch to the right of the tail O of Orlando exposed the side of her breast. The hair tornadoing from the top of her wrap cap ruffled in the cool breeze. Her face was dull and needed washing. She squinted up at the sun as if confused by it, crossed her arms and clutched her elbows in her palms like she would break apart if she didn't hold herself together. I'm gonna miss you, Jay. Her shaky words fell to you. She was crying. This is to be expected with your mother and her depression. She usually cries stoically, silently, alone, what you call her thug tears. But that day, when she finally looked down at you, she broke wide open, and there were hiccups and snot and pain flowed right into your chest. You wanted her to feel the disappointment you felt, but you watched your mother, folded like a love letter you've desperately wanted to read all your life, and you shut off the car and wrapped her in an awkward hug as both of you limped back into the house and settled onto the couch. She told you she felt guilty about not being there for you, not just this weekend, but during your early teenage years, when she was preoccupied with the back and forth of taking pills and then trying not to take pills in rehab. She told you she wasn't currently using, you'd wondered, but she thought about it because of the depression. It had always been there. Always, you asked her, recalling those goofy mother-daughter moments. You know, I grew up poor, country, Black, dark-skinned Black, and it wasn't easy. Even when I was little, sometimes it was hard to find something to be happy about. So, yeah. Your mother paused and nodded, like the weight of what she was about to say and what it prophesied for her future was settling over her. Her face was somber, with the accepted defeat by a formidable opponent. Always. She finally answered, and you felt a hopelessness all your own creep inside. It must have bled onto your face because your mother said, I do feel genuinely happy sometimes. You make me happy. She grabbed your hand. You make me very happy and proud. She smiled, sheepish and closed-mouthed. You didn't believe her. She'd had you for 18 years and had still said always. You thought your mother's game was weak and sloppy, but her hand was warm and squeezing yours, and her smile reached her eyes. You told her to let go of the past. Now is what matters. We're here now together. You told her, I'm here for you. After everything was said, you sat quietly, uncomfortable with what you now knew, until your mother was snoring beside you. She slept often, but never snored. This was reassuring. She was in a peaceful sleep. You covered her with a blanket and waited until she woke up to leave. You didn't want her to feel abandoned. The next Friday, you surprised your mother and drove down, even though you were scheduled to work on Saturday and had a test on Monday, math, which you were failing, driving down your GPA and putting your scholarship in danger. You thought you and your mother could catch the movie you missed last weekend. When you arrived at 5 o'clock, she was in the bed asleep, wearing the same old t-shirt. She said she didn't feel like going anywhere and that you should have called. You left and went to Zaria's apartment. You can't fix her. She's got to get better on her own. Zaria told you for the million, zillion, trillionth time. I know it's hard, but you can't sacrifice your life for hers. Melissa's mother, Beverly, had a heart attack. No one saw it coming. Even if your mother doesn't jump, you will see death approaching her from miles away. Zaria expects every phone call to be a strange white person telling her that her mother has overdosed. These alone are reasons not to touch Melissa, to keep your arms folded around your own chest, reasons to hate her. But you have more. The Monday after the disappointing visit with your mother, you left math class feeling dazed and dumb. You didn't have the official confirmation yet, but knew that you failed the test. On Wednesday, your mother called while you were at the math study group you joined on Monday. You didn't want to answer, but she rarely calls you. She was crying. Another problem you couldn't solve. Exhaustion swept into your bones, but you remembered what you told her. I'm here for you. The way her smile reached her eyes when she told you you make her happy. You told everyone you were going downstairs to the lobby to take the call. They said they were getting hungry and taking the studying to Mama Bear's for some pizza. You stayed behind. You remember Beverly from move-in day. She had a blonde bob and was dressed for function in a breezy beige linen dress with thick-soled hiking sandals, in contrast to your mother, who wore jeans on an 85-degree day because she thinks her legs are too fat, and cursed as soon as she walked into the dorm room, stifling heat. I'll be back. She dropped the shopping bags full of the new bedding she bought for you, and her flip-flops, obnoxious with Coach C logos on the footpad, slapped the linoleum tile as she walked away. You and Zaria stood just inside the doorway. The baking room grumble hummed with the efforts of the old air conditioner in the window, struggling to make a difference. Melissa left from the bare mattress of the twin bed she claimed for her own. Oh my God, which one of you is JayLynn? He marked her face with the tender pink flush of a double cheek smack, and her blue eyes zipped between you and Zaria, who exchanged a look with you because Melissa was legit bouncing on her toes. Zaria smirked as you hesitantly revealed yourself. I'm so happy you're here. I thought something had happened to you. I was hoping we could go to the induction together and grab lunch before, Melissa said, but I gotta eat something now. Where's your purse, Mom? Check under some bags. It's here somewhere. Beverly tossed the words to Melissa before turning to you. Are you excited? Her grin was all teeth and a little disarming. It seemed to push, be excited. Yeah, you replied and smiled a shaky smile before crossing the room to sit your bags on the other bare bed. I'm starving, Melissa groaned. You are not starving, Beverly corrected her. You ate breakfast. Yeah, hours ago. Melissa hunched over, pawing around pink and purple plastic storage bins and white garbage bags. Her denim shorts dug into her thighs, and you predicted that she would struggle with the freshman 15. Beverly rolled her eyes, and you liked her a little for that. Zaria dropped the box she was carrying by your feet. Are you her sister? Beverly asked her. Big cousin, Zaria clarified. Are you a student here too? No, I attend JCC in Louisville. Oh, some of the chirp in Beverly's voice died. Some expectation zapped. But you can still help her navigate the transition to college, right? Living on campus is one part, a big one, but there's also adjusting to classes, syllabi, the different professors, maintaining a schedule. Her voice rose in sing-song as she listed the adjustments, casting her words to Melissa, who was preoccupied with the triumph of finding Beverly's purse, a brown hardware and logo-free leather sack bearing a hard board patina from which Melissa pulled granola bars and a large freezer bag full of grapes after plopping back on the bed. Y'all want some? She offered. You and Zaria declined. The grapes were bright green and jewel shiny. You weren't hungry, but you wanted to squirrel handfuls of them into your mouth until your cheeks puffed. You felt like the Trix Rabbit or Hamburglar or some other pitiful character whose hunger was always being taunted by something they couldn't have. Your mother had stopped at McDonald's for breakfast before heading to Bloomington late, setting out at 8:30 for a 2-hour drive that made you late for the 10 o'clock check-in, and she had not bothered to pack snacks. Melissa shrugged and ripped a granola bar's packaging open with her teeth. My period must be coming. I just want to eat everything. God, I'm glad it didn't come today. Trying to move all this crap in the heat and all bleeding and bloating and gross. Melissa, Jesus, Beverly frowned. Nobody wants to think about that. She's a girl, Mom. It's not like she doesn't know what I'm talking about. Plus, we're roomies. We're going to know so much about each other after this year. She grinned at you. Zaria raised an eyebrow that said, this white girl is going to be something. Beverly and Melissa volunteered to help you and Zaria bring in the rest of your things. You found your mother in the car, sipping a can of vending machine Coke, blasting the air conditioning and listening to the radio. James Taylor sang over a folksy guitar. It's just so hot, she whined through the open window. Yeah, Mama, it's August, you said. She didn't register your sarcasm. I thought I was gonna pass out. She sighed, laid her head back on the seat and closed her eyes, which prevented her from seeing you roll yours. You were tired of her being so weak, always run down and worn out when you needed her. She opened her eyes slowly as if coming to. I'll be ready in a minute. Beverly and Melissa are helping me, you said in hopes of hurting her feelings, letting her know that you would be fine without her. Beverly, Melissa, and Zaria were pulling your belongings from the trunk. Beverly dragged the turquoise plastic storage container, identical to Melissa's, past the car's driver's side and called to your mother. Don't worry about it. We got you. You cool off. Her calves were tight with muscle. Roomies help roomies, no problem, Melissa said. She hugged pillows to her chest and marched behind Beverly. Zaria shook her head at Melissa and followed with more boxes. Well, they seem nice, your mother said. You want to come in and sit with me for a minute? She patted the passenger seat and smiled, but her eyes held a seconds away from crying gloss. You didn't want your mother's tears here, even though you understood that most of those tears were for you. They said, I'm proud of you, I love you. But you also knew some of those tears were for her because you were leaving her, maybe because she was lonely, possibly because the tears were for reasons that you and no one else would ever understand. I gotta get going, you said, I'm already late. You carried all the tears your mother had ever cried, the words she didn't say, with the rest of your stuff. You turned 18 last month in October. You are an official adult, but you don't think you have spent enough time as a child. Too much of your life has been spent mothering your own mother, making her meals of chili dogs, just add water pancakes and hamburger helper that she sometimes ate and sometimes didn't. Telling her to brush her teeth, take a shower, put on clean clothes. You are so tired of all that and so scared not to be doing it. The day you met Melissa, she told you Beverly was her best friend. She said she and her mother had always been close. Some nights they had mother-daughter slumber parties and they stayed up late watching romantic comedies, talking and laughing over brownies and popcorn. You wanted to end the conversation here, but Melissa kept talking and explained that she never realized her mother was her best friend, the one she could really trust and tell anything until recently. Her former best friend, JayLynn, slept with her ex-boyfriend, Jason, the night they all graduated high school. They were at a party that I didn't go to because my Nana and uncle were in from out of town. She said they were drunk and it just happened. Melissa made air quotes with her fingers, but I didn't buy it. I always thought they were too close and jokey. So I called her out on her bullshit and we stopped talking. I kind of thought we would be friends again after I calmed down. I mean, I've done some stupid things when I was drunk too, you know. She paused like she was waiting for you to ask what, so you could trade stories, but you don't. You don't have the kind of stories she's looking for. You don't like to drink and have never been drunk before. You don't like the idea of losing control of yourself, even if you thought you could afford to do so. You're afraid you're genetically prone to addiction. You are not about to tell Melissa this, or that you lost your virginity at 14 because you wanted to see if your mother would notice, worry, wake up. You only agreed to walk to the student union with her to get some pizza. You didn't ask to hear any of the shit she told you. All you did was be the fool and take the bait and ask who, when Melissa was like, I hope I don't see that bitch. And then she started telling you about Caitlin and how she was attending IU too, and they planned to be roommates before that fateful night. Next thing I know, I'm in Sonic one day, and here they come walking out together with some slushies or milkshakes or whatever, and they're trading cups and sipping and tasting, and that's how I know Caitlin's a liar. What happened between her and Jason wasn't accidental. I couldn't believe it. When I was little, Mom was always telling me, be nice to other people and they'll be nice to you. And I kept telling her, you lied, Mom, you lied. Beverly's words via Melissa's mouth caught your attention. Your mother had never told you anything like that. As a poor Black girl in rural Kentucky, your mother learned from her mother not to suppose much from the world. She never expected anyone to be nice to her no matter what she did. I feel awful for that now because Mom is an angel. She brought me food when I didn't want to eat, lay in the bed with me while I cried and cried. It was horrible. I wasn't even going to come here, but they have one of the best undergraduate business programs. And she told me if I was going to succeed in business and in life, I had to get tougher, stronger, and not let people keep me from my dreams. She's really helped me get through. I mean, I'm still on Zoloft, but it's not that bad, she lied. Melissa showed you her schedule so that you could link up her words, not yours, in the gaps for lunch, studying in the library, or whatever, another one of her words. She had classes Monday through Friday, but by October, she was only going to class once, maybe twice a week. Around mid-September, she ran into Caitlin at Burger King in the Union, and Caitlin was wearing Jason's necklace. It's just a cross necklace, but I know that necklace. That's how close I was. We almost bumped into each other. She didn't even say, excuse me, and had the nerve to look at me like I done something to her. You felt bad for Melissa. In the pauses between her words, you tossed her cliches about other fish in the sea and lying down with dogs and waking up with fleas. But when these didn't seem to work, you backed up quickly from Melissa and her situation and maintained your distance. Even when you were grabbing meals for yourself at the Union, you refused to bring her food so she could stay in the bed and sleep. Melissa called Beverly every day at 9:30 on Melissa's first break at the post office, right as you were heading out for your first class on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and as you were going to shower on Tuesday and Thursday. You are sure that Melissa talked about you like a dog when you were gone, that she told Beverly you were standoffish, rude, selfish, mean, possibly a bitch. But it is necessary for you to be all these things. You care, you are not inhumane, but your actions are bigger than Melissa. She is practice, strength training. You have learned how to close the door on her crying when you leave for work, the library, dinner with other friends, without looking back. I'm gonna end the excerpt from the story here. Okay, at this point, are there any questions?
I have a nosy question, so if somebody has a dignified question, go for it first.
I know the question's fine.
Okay, you don't want to know, you don't have to answer it, but I just want, because you said this is autobiographical to some degree. I'm wondering if you had a Zaria in your life.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. The Zaria in my life is my cousin Paulette,
okay.
who's my cousin and best friend.
And the reason I'm asking is just what comes across is the strength it takes, not just to go to school or all these other things that are difficult, but to try to separate or pull away from somebody you care about who's hurting.
Yeah,
So beautiful, beautiful reading.
thank you. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Stephen.
So I thought I was gonna ask you about dialogue just because, you know, the way you started and the title of the book, but then you read the story of a second person point of view, and I was sort of kind of thinking about like what the second person point of view was doing in the story, and then there was a moment in the story where the narrator speaking to you and sort of saying like you kind of this fear about losing control or not being in control, and I'm sort of thinking about that second person at times, you know, can apply a certain kind of pressure to the character that's being spoken to, and sometimes it can almost be pressure that maybe that character doesn't really even want, you know, like it's almost kind of pushing that you think this, you do this, and I guess, but I am kind of curious, like what that choice was for you, or if it was like give them subject matter of the story, the relationship of the story, kind of moving away from one territory, moving into another territory that's unknown. What was that choice to write in this, in that perspective, the second person?
Thank you for that question. I initially, when I was writing the story, it's funny because I thought it was first person. And then when I really paid attention, like if you write, I think you understand that sometimes, and then you look back and like, oh, okay, that was second person. Okay, bet, cool. But so when I realized that I was writing in second person, it wasn't like when I started the story, it actually wasn't even a conscious decision that I mean, you know, the initial writing, of course, like now that it's in a book, it was very conscious, but I found that the stories that I felt the most emotionally vulnerable writing them were the stories that were written in second person. And one of my former writing professors at IU and the former Kentucky poet laureate Crystal Wilkinson like calls it like writing close to the bone. And like when I'm writing, I found that in the stories for the collection, when I'm writing really close to the bone, then it shifts to the second person to gain a sense of distance. And I mean, there's always a distance because I'm an author and the character's fictional, but there's still, you know, the sense of like taking on that vulnerability, and the you helps push a little some of that away. Thank you for the question. Any other questions? Go ahead, Sonia.
Thank you for the reading. It was so wonderful to hear you read it out loud after having read it on the page. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about, like, in that story or just in general, when you're like channeling these characters who are 17, 18-ish years old, like, were there certain kinds of like media or music or movies or things that you kind of watched, like get yourself into that headspace, or like what helped to kind of like give you the gel for that, to get into that voice and get into like that space? I don't know, even that could apply maybe to any of the stories.
Oh, that's a good question too. I don't necessarily, because it's funny because I think I'm doing that now for what I'm working on now, and I'm seeking certain sorts of movies and songs and stuff for that now. But I think that I remember like I would do the timeline, because oh my gosh, like the math of trying to like line up when the characters were in the story. Woo! But when I was doing the timeline and I came across the years, I would like just do a Google search for like top hits of that year on Billboard or whatever, and then like memories would come to me. And so like and one of the stories, there's mention of like Bone Thugs and Harmonies, like the Crossroads, because like the summer that song came out, like yo, like you could not like go 5 minutes without hearing that song. And like if you had like the box, anybody, like any of y'all like older people like remember the box where you could like pay for the videos to play, and like I don't know whose mama gave them all this money to pay to listen to the Crossroads like back to back, but somebody's mama did, and or they didn't, and the person got in trouble. But yeah, so I remember listening to the Crossroads. I remember listening to like the Waiting to Exhale soundtrack, because there's a mention of the song like Not Gonna Cry. And so like just all that good stuff, like all those good movies, like the Menace to Society and the Chronic soundtrack, and all of those like brought me back. Like when Tupac died, and like all that brought me back to that time. So like it was fun listening to the stuff and watching the movies. Yeah, Catherine.
Question in the chat. So, the question is, as a debut novelist, what advice would you give your
would you give now to your high school self to prepare yourself for today's success?
That's a good question. Oh, I don't even know. Oh, man. I feel like I might. Well, my high school self, I mean, I liked writing, but it wasn't like anything that I even thought that I could, that I saw myself even doing beyond like high school or taking classes or something like that. So I guess I would tell her, you can do something with this. Like, it's fun, but you could do something with this. But I almost hesitate. I would almost hesitate to giving myself that advice, because then I think I would have put a lot of pressure on myself. Because once I really understood that, like, you mean there are people who write books and then they get paid to write the book. They don't get paid, most don't get paid enough to write the books. Like, let's just put that out there. But like, I think that I would have, like, I don't know, just put a lot of pressure on myself. So maybe I wouldn't have told her anything. Maybe I wouldn't. Maybe I'd just let her be. Yes.
Well, the whole, you're reading and these very alive, fresh characters with your earrings bobbing. It's quite enchanting.
Thank
My
you.
question is, have the times that we're living in, have they impacted your characters, either freeing them up or stifling?
Do you mean the characters in this book or characters that I'm working on, or which characters,
Either,
I
I
guess? Are you talking about like the cultural climate of the times when the stories were set? Let me think. I think that most of the stories like stick pretty close to like the domestic space. So they don't get out too much as far as the climate of like what's happening in the world. Yes, there's reference to the pop culture that's happening in the world and things like that. There's one story in the collection called Animal Kingdom, in which it takes place on Derby Day that just happened. And Derby Day, if you live in the city, is, well, in the past, it was very different from what, like, if you don't live in the city, what you know about Derby. Like, it's back home Derby, like, it's about barbecues and getting together and going to cruise on Broadway. And sometimes people will race motorcycles and stuff, right? Like, it's Screaming Eagle Spook. So the story takes place like, and it's set in Shawnee Park. And so like, that's the culture there. And so that culture, you know, can be fun when you're a teenager, right? But there's also an element of danger that is there too. Like, people sometimes can be having sex right in public, or like, I've seen situations where like men would just like swarm onto a girl and lift her skirt up and just leave her exposed. So that story particularly like shines a light on that climate, and how that sort of like sexualization of like that social event can be enticing for a young girl who's like seeking validation through the opposite sex, but also how it can be like very dangerous.
We have time for one last question.
Okay, I saw your hand here, Elise, go ahead.
My question is, when you're writing, what's your personal environment like? Are you sitting at a computer, or have a special chair or a special place?
I usually write at a coffee shop with my writer friends. Many of whom are here. And so, and I go, so we sort of cafe hop around the city. but we do go to like Lynn Edith a lot, Boulder Coffee. Look, pluggity plug like I'm getting money, but and I write. I usually write longhand before I write on the laptop, just because it feels like less pressure to just do it that way. Although if I'm writing like a very, very rough draft, I'll start. And if it seems like it's getting too messy, then I'll immediately have to go to the laptop to like feel like something's happening besides my mess. But yeah, I don't really, yeah, that's my environment, coffee shop. If I'm writing at home, I'm usually, even though I have a desk, I rarely write at the desk. I usually just sit on the couch and write on the couch. All right.
Thank you so much, everybody, for coming, and thank you so much to Kristen for being here. It was a really beautiful reading. As Kristen mentioned earlier, we unfortunately don't have Bookstore because it comes out in April, but we do.
Well, come down in October.
October, oh my goodness. April was last month. I'm silly. In October, but we do have book plates downstairs and you could pre-order the book at the counter.
Wonderful.